Hey, what is up, Steelers Nation? I'm Tyler Feldman. No Ben, no Chris. Wayne, it's just you and me, Big G.
And I'm Wayne Gandy. Did y'all really expect Aaron Rodgers to give you a timetable? Let's go here on the Steelers Squad Show.
Wave those terrible towels. It's the Steelers Squad. Everything Pittsburgh Steelers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Steel City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From the steel curtain to the next generation, the Steelers Squad Show starts now.
Yes, it does. This is the Steelers Squad Show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Again, he's Wayne Gandy. I'm Tyler Feldman. And tonight on this very show, on a Wednesday night, what in the world is wrong with the Steelers facilities, Wayne? According to this year's NFLPA report card, the Steelers ranked dead last after receiving multiple F grades. Initial thoughts. We'll dive into it later, but initial thoughts on that, Wayne.
It's the Steelers. I'm never surprised. Really, a couple of weeks ago, I thought the NFL had won a case against the NFLPA about putting out this report card, but at least for now, it's still finding its way into the media, and it's a topic that a lot, especially because, you know, if you're the Steelers and you're the last team, they're going to really get into you. You know, it seems like if you're team 28, nobody says anything, but if you're dead last, you're going to get a couple of texts, a couple of phone calls about this, and this is just something that people have been asking me about, and I tell them, well, the first thing you have to do that report, I've never really looked at the report as far as breaking it down, but one of the first things you always have to look at is when were the facilities even built? You know, every stadiums are just like facilities. They're on a 25, 30-year kind of loop. You usually don't get a new facility for that unless you're on the college level. But that used to be on the college level a recruiting tool. But now pros are expected to keep pace, but last still is a little sad regardless of where you are in that cycle.
It's been an ongoing issue for the Steelers the last handful of years. We'll dive into that a little bit more in just a moment. We'll also talk about Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show today. He said a whole lot of nothing. He did say that he stays in shape at 42 so that he could have sex with his wife. He didn't use the S word. He used the F word. So if you want to check that out on the Pat McAfee show, go right ahead, okay? This is a little bit more PG here on the Locked On Podcast Network, but we will dive into what he said and what it means for the Steelers at the quarterback position. And that's not all. We'll dive into Wayne's world, get his thoughts, a little memory lane since we had Cordell Stewart on the show last week. We haven't gone down memory lane with Wayne Gandy at all. So we've taken Big G for granted. We will walk down memory lane, hear some stories about his time in the black and gold, and then Wayne's got something special. A big figure in the sport of football passed away today, so Wayne will share his thoughts on that individual later on in the show. But Wayne, let's get back to this report card, the F grades. I like that these get leaked because, yes, maybe they signed something, but the Steelers, again, you mentioned college football. The big difference with college football versus professional football at the NFL level, and it's tough to say, but it's an arms race in college football. You want to get the best recruits. You have donors throwing money all over the place. For example, Texas A&M, those facilities, it's insane what they're building in Austin, Texas for the Longhorns, an on-campus practice facility. It's going to be magnificent. It's that arms race in college football that doesn't translate to the NFL. And the Steelers, they've been beaten and battered for having some of the worst facilities, multiple F and F- marks for their facilities. Now, Acrisure Stadium will be getting new grass as a result. That's a report that is out. So hopefully this Tahoma 31 Bermuda grass mixture that's coming in for the 2026 season solves some problems. But Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, High school football plays there during the season. It's a tough climate to, I think, have a really great surface as well. But you look at the practice facility on the south side, training room lacks updated technology. Apparently, there's only 5 stalls in the bathroom. I mean, what are we doing? I work in tech sales full time, and we've got more than 5 stalls in that bathroom. What are we doing? You've got grown men much larger than most men. 5 stalls, Wayne? Come on. Was it any better at Three Rivers?
No, it was worse in Three Rivers. Three Rivers didn't even have doors on the 3 stalls that they did have. Hello. But here's the deal. For those when you're in college, as I said, it's a recruiting tool. It is one of those things that, now you have the component of being able to pay players, but that was the bread and butter on how you were going to get a recruit to come into and play for you. You were going to show them all the bells and whistles. College also, their facilities are meant for you to spend your free time there. Games, pool tables, all those activities. Pro football is in and out. A guy can go back home and play pool. He can go back home and jump in his jacuzzi. It is one of those things. Once the bell rings that the day is over, professional players leave. College players still linger. You're trying to entice them to come over earlier. A lot of that is so the coach can put eyes on you. A lot of that is also to try to cut down on, getting in trouble and those kind of things. So you build these facilities that look like cathedrals that you walk into, and it makes anybody jealous. I mean, you walk into a weight room at the University of Georgia, and it makes you feel like, look, let me take my suit off and get me a rep in, because all this equipment, you got to get you a set of 20 push-ups and just to feel like you've done something. So that's the biggest thing. But the Steelers, when I came in, they were still in Three Rivers. I came there for the idea of being with a winning program. I was coming from the Rams. So the only 2 things on my mind at that time was winning and getting a paycheck. I really didn't think about that it was only 3 stalls and 2 of them didn't have doors. There was 2 urinals. The dinner table was going to be in the weight room. That's where they would put the food, and you just go in the weight room. The weight room was the size of maybe about a 10 by 10, 12 by 12 room. They had the same little row machine that Franco used to warm up on in there. They had
the food was in the weight room. Excuse me. That just doesn't sound all that sanitary, Wayne. I've been in enough gyms, man. That kind of grosses me out.
But it was just, those times. And even back then, coming from Auburn and going into the pros, even when, like I said, even when I mentioned the Rams, when I got out to LA, they had gone to Anaheim. They had gutted a elementary school and made a football facility. So you were sitting in those little class desks. So then it was the same thing. So
I can't visualize you at a class desk, Wayne. That doesn't work.
So you take a guy like a Broderick Jones, take him from University of Georgia, bring him to Pittsburgh or most NFL programs, and they're going to feel like there's something missing. But the Steelers, as far as some of the things, like you said, the biggest thing to me is the field. And we've talked about that. The player safety, the field is the number one thing that sticks out. And it's been that way. It's historically been that way from the time that the partnership of Pitt and the Steelers decided they were going to join in on Heinz Field. They joined on the south side in a facility. So you go over there, and it was half Panthers, half Steelers. But on the field, when you start talking about grass fields, you're letting college play. Sometimes you get a weekend where it's a back-to-back. Later in the year, you start letting the high school have the playoffs. They start having the championship. It's just hard. It's one of those things. Do we try to get new grass in? But then that's not going to settle fast enough. It's going to chew up based on the weather. So, it's just a hard road, and hopefully I'm quite sure in the works is a new facility, because that was 2000, the current facility that they're in. So you imagine here in the next 3-4 years, they will be building something new, but we are still talking about the Rooneys and a family that is the heart and soul of football. And that's kind of where they keep it. They're not going to be adding any extra to it. You're going to get the cheeseburger, but your option of cheese is going to be American.
And
it's going to be one of those kind of approaches. It's just how they are.
And there are whispers that I've heard from people within the football world about the Rooneys being cheaper when it comes to this kind of stuff. So when I see this, it doesn't shock me. But again, Wayne, don't you think that times have changed? They have. And I know it's hard to look across the street and see PNC Park built at the same time. And I was there last summer at a game, and that place is still immaculate. To have something so special, such a special ballpark, a great facility, it's been nipped and tucked. It doesn't even look like it's 2 decades plus old. Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium, much different story. And as much as the Rooneys would love to stay in that old system, I think you've got to advance and spend some money and upgrade the facilities, because you want to. The Steelers are at a point right now where you'd be wanting to bring big names in, and maybe part of the hesitation is, yeah, you're wearing the black and gold, but what do you have to offer? It's a great sports town. Aaron Rodgers said how much he loved Pittsburgh on the Pat McAfee show today, but you've got to start investing in some of these projects to entice these guys to stick around in some capacity, don't you think?
Oh, no doubt. And I feel like the whole organization is shifting. I think we saw it last year with the names they brought in. We talked about it all season long. Steelers starting to do a little of that cowboy thing. You're bringing in personalities that the Steelers, they would stay away from. But I think they're understanding that no matter where they search, they're not going to be able to find that just true Steeler mindset anymore, where guys are going to, even with facilities, just act like that doesn't matter. There was a time where it was about just cashing checks and trying to win football. Now there seems to be a tidal wave of, just like when you look at the things that they're talking about, treatment of family, food and dining area, locker room, nutritionists, those kind of things that the Steelers, that's just not the way they operated. But I do feel like even going into this draft, even hiring Mike McCarthy, you're getting a more of, we're going to slowly adjust into how the new wave of football is played out on the field, in the background, on the coaching staff, in the facilities. And I expect the next time around when they build a facility, it'll have a little more longevity to it. Now, PNC Park, let's be honest now. I mean, the crowd kind of dictates the wear and tear. And the Pirates just recently started getting some people into the stadium.
But I hear what you're saying. It's more than Acrisure Stadium's double the size, fits twice as many people. A football stadium's different architecturally than a baseball ballpark. So I get it. It's just, I think that's part of the psyche of the Pittsburgh sports fan. How is PNC Park just immaculate? And again, you look at who's playing on it, it's just the Pirates. So you don't have all the wear and tear. I think that's the biggest problem right now. And hopefully this new grass mixture solves some of those problems. But I think until you figure out, maybe Pitt gets its own stadium and you figure out a way to alleviate the wear and tear, the Steelers might continue to run into these problems. So again, hopefully the Steelers don't finish dead last this time around next season. Hopefully there are some improvements, but it's not a great look to be dead last, Wayne. It doesn't sit right with me. It just doesn't.
No, coming in last, no. I think they really will have to address some things, and things like you said that they typically didn't even have on their radar because of the type of athlete and player mindset they were bringing in. That those guys were not necessarily looking for that, but now the whole pool of the new athlete, they are looking for a little more corporate America treatment than football used to offer.
I've been to the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium, and I know they've done some stuff to that facility, but it had a phone booth in the press box. Modern era. And the Steelers are finishing dead last. We've got to be better. We've got to be better. Come on. Come on. All right. First quarter, it's over. Still ahead on tonight's show. Aaron Rodgers again. He spoke today. He said a whole lot of nothing, but Wayne and I, Big G and I, will be discussing the impact of what he said, what it means, and where the Steelers go at that quarterback position if, let's say, Aaron Rodgers, who will be a free agent when free agency kicks off on March 11th, he will be a free agent. So what happens if he doesn't come back? That's next right here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. This episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much they carry at work and relationships and families and all the unseen roles they step into every single day. It's easy to celebrate that strength, but it's just as important to make space for their emotional well-being. And honestly, that goes for all of us. I think about my mom, my little sister, my Grammy, my girlfriend, and just how much they carry without always saying so. And it makes me think, how many of us are doing the same thing? The roles we play, the expectations we carry, the pressure we don't always talk about. Therapy can help with all that, creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and supporting your overall well-being. With more than 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served worldwide, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform. And it works. Fill out a short questionnaire, get matched, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch at any time. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's better, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, second quarter here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. He's Big G, Wayne Gandy. Got the nickname from Slash last week. We had Cordell Stewart on. If you want to take a look at that episode, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, a reminder, the Locked On Steelers Daily Podcast with Christopher Carter is on the Locked On Steelers YouTube channel, and the Locked On Steelers podcast channels on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, again, wherever you get it, you can find us there. Of course, I'm Tyler Feldman. This is a Wednesday night, the first Wednesday of March, as we are marching toward the NFL draft in Pittsburgh this upcoming summer. But before then, it is free agency that kicks off a week from today. Wayne, Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show on Wednesday, today. Again, aside from him saying at 42 that he stays in shape so that he can have sex with his wife, he used the F word. Again, very entertaining stuff. We'll be PG here. But Wayne, he also said that he had conversations with Omar Khan, and he thinks Omar enjoyed having him in Pittsburgh, and additionally that there's been no deadline put between him and the Steelers. So there's no contract offer yet. He said that. There's nothing that I'm having debate between. That's what he said. I'm a free agent. I'm enjoying my time with my wife and enjoying this part of the offseason. And I think there's conversations to be had down the line, but right now there hasn't been any progressive conversations. I love Mike McCarthy, and Mike and I have kept some contact over the years. So what do you make of everything that he just said there today, Wayne?
I think that Aaron Rodgers, like any player, has earned the right to make this decision, and he seems to be okay with the seats being filled. They're playing musical chairs, and at this point, if you don't have a chair open for me when I decide, then I'm okay with that. He's been on this kind of path over the last 4 or 5 seasons, really since he left Green Bay. He's a guy who really wants his offseason. he's old enough and been around the league long enough to remember where your offseason really wasn't off-season. From your last game until after the draft, teams really did not bother you. And it seems that he's trying to create that void. As he said, he's a free agent. I think that if he came back to play, Pittsburgh would definitely be the stop in the place he wants to go because that's where he just was at. He has his former head coach there, all those things lined up. But he's really letting the Steelers know, make the moves you need to make. And if somebody's around and I still want to play in another 3 or 4 months, then call me up. But right now I'm off work. I'm out at Joshua Tree or wherever he goes at this point in his life to feel that freedom. And
to feel that freedom.
But Aaron Rodgers, I think, we know he's on the door of retirement. He could wake up tomorrow and say he wants to retire, or he could say he wants to play one more year. But I think the Steelers will approach this offseason. I think the hire of Mike McCarthy, Omar Khan being a little more public, will be on a search of going to fill that void any way that they choose to.
If you remember last time around this year, if you remember last year around this time, let me rephrase that. Rodgers visited Pittsburgh on March 21st, but he didn't agree to terms until right before mandatory minicamp on June 5th. Now, Omar Khan, when he was speaking to reporters at the Combine last week, he told reporters, I don't really want to say it has to be done by then, but would like to have an idea. It just isn't going to go like it did last year. And when he said done by then, he was talking about the start of free agency on March 11th. Wayne, I don't know. I don't want to be dragging this to June 5th and not saying it will, but in my mind, I don't love that they haven't really had a ton of conversations. I guess enjoy the offseason. And yes, I agree with you that Aaron Rodgers deserves and has certainly earned the right to enjoy the offseason how he sees fit. At 42, it's crazy to even think about a guy coming back to play another season of football. But man, he had only good things to say about Will Howard. Ben Roethlisberger had great things to say about Will Howard. He had great things to say about Mason Rudolph. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers all today on the podcast. So I don't want to be going down this path of yes or no, but in the off chance it is a no, Kyler Murray's been dragged into the conversation. Do you think that would be a good fit for the Steelers? Or do you think, hey, let's see what this Will Howard guy's got and see if he can kind of lock it down at the quarterback position?
It's interesting with Kyler Murray, and there's only a few guys out there. The Colts, I think they are going to tag Daniel Jones and at least make teams work to try to get him away. But when you look at their team, Kyler Murray leaving Arizona, his statement is, he feels like he failed the Cardinals. And I get what he's saying. He's the first pick of the draft, high hopes. Couple of years there, you saw a lot of excitement, and then the injury bug hit him, which goes along with it. And that's the thing about it. There was a time guys like him couldn't get in that first round because of their size. And then every once in a while, you see that rears its head about how having some size to be able to take those hits. But he's an athletic guy that can move around. And that's always scary to me when you talk about outside cold teams. Because you get late in the year, as we just talking about, the turf starts ripping up, your outside, your arm, your angles, all that changes in that cold weather. It's exciting to think about, and you have to give him a look to think about it. Can you bring him in? But it's an interesting part to bring him after all those injuries out on that surface in that division. Can he take those hits in a physical division? And he's been indoors. His basically his, at least in his home games, that's where he's been indoors. He's used to 72 degrees. It's always sunny in Arizona outside anyway. And inside the stadium, the turf is nice. They roll it out, let it get a little sun and water, and then they roll it back in for game day out there. So But I think Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, we keep talking about those guys, and this could be a year, unfortunately, where those are your guys, and you got to get through it based on what Mike McCarthy and they feel like they're going to do in the draft with that 21st pick.
Sometimes you just got to throw a young guy to the wolves and see how he responds, and that's where I'm at with Will Howard. It's kind of what happened with Ben Roethlisberger a little bit, and he succeeded mightily. He was able to win football games. It wasn't always pretty, but that's kind of what I see with Will Howard. And until you see him actually take some snaps and play some downs and get in games a little bit, it's hard for me to say why not Will Howard. I'd rather go that route than bring in Kyler Murray, quite frankly, or even Mason Rudolph for that matter.
Yeah, when you look on that side of the ball, you feel like that's why they hired Mike McCarthy. That if they found themselves needing to go in that direction, here's a guy that has the proven track record of being able to produce from that position. Even when his starters go down, he's been able to get wins with his backup. So to me, some of hiring him is either you were drafting a young quarterback or you were going with a guy like a Will Howard. So you bring in this veteran head coach from an offensive mind standpoint to be the head coach because of that.
How important or how critical do you think the timing is for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision? I don't think you can wait until June 5th again. Do you need to know immediately before free agency? How do you see things through your lens, Wayne?
I really think it has to be a little sooner. I think when you have a regime change, everybody has to come back faster. You have to make quicker decisions. You got to decide on your team, whether win or lose. You got to go ahead and make some decisions to start building some continuity. Because, even if Aaron Rodgers was 35 and under contract, a new coach comes in, a new scheme comes in. I need everybody that's going to be running this in as soon as possible. So it does put a little more pressure on the Steelers to decide which direction they want to go. Are we going to wait on Aaron Rodgers because he still knows how much of the offense is still the same for Mike McCarthy, but that is not going to give the other players, the other pieces, time to gel with him. And to me, it's always when a regime change, everybody needs to come in. It's, and I went through a lot of coaches, trust me. So I went through like 8 head coaches. But I do know the only time you could be comfortable is when the same head coach was coming back the next year. When they told me it was a new guy, I was there, with the rookie camp because I need to learn the plays. I need to get infused into what's going on. But so I think this year it needs to be a quicker decision by the Steelers because on what direction they're going in.
I don't need Omar Khan and the Rooney family to apply immense pressure to Aaron Rodgers, but it was a little bit too lax on the podcast today for me. I need a little more pep in the step. Enjoy the offseason. It was a tough season. It was a long season. And only former players can really understand how grueling an NFL season is. You throw on a couple more games now, but I don't want to be in a place for that position with the new head coach. Obviously, Aaron did talk ad nauseum about how cool it would be to reunite with Mike McCarthy. That was his first guy in Green Bay. So my heart's saying he sticks around for another year. Would love to have a final decision within the next 2 weeks, though. All right, halftime here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. When we come back, we will dive into Wayne's world. I was inspired by Cordell Stewart last week, all these stories he was sharing, and I thought to myself during that show, boy, we really haven't taken Wayne Gandy down memory lane and heard some of his favorite stories. So that's what we'll do next. Stay with us. Third quarter on the other side right here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Third quarter here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. And Wayne, we have a little breaking news. Steelers to release tight end Jonnu Smith, underscoring commitment to Pat Freiermuth. How about that? The Athletic reporting that news. What do you think that impact will be for the Steelers? And looks like the Jonnu Smith thing didn't really work out. That 3 tight end package. See you later. Early thoughts. I know this is just breaking right now. Here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. Hey, this is a news organization, okay?
Well, when you talk about the Steelers tight end room last year, you feel like it probably was the deepest. But it was a position where it seemed like Arthur Smith just could not utilize all these guys. Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith. You felt like Jonnu Smith came in more like a hybrid tight end. He was going to be more flexed out, almost like a big receiver a lot of times, but you never saw that. And then you would take him out and let Spencer Anderson do the blocking. And then all that caused Pat Freiermuth to go missing every other game. You know, it's like one game he'd have 8 catches, and the next game he has 1. So I think this will simplify that room. That is going to be led by Freiermuth and Washington. Those are going to be your 2 guys. And this probably works out well for Jonnu Smith as far as I know it creates cap space for the Steelers, about $7 million worth of cap space. But it becomes, as I said, when you bring in a new regime, you're going to have guys that have to be put out there just for the cap space or just don't fit the next coach's scheme and what they want to do. But I didn't think Jonnu Smith, I don't think this is about that he couldn't play. It was he never really was a consistent cog in the machine. But Omar Khan, and as we talked about, this is going to have to be a very active offseason for the GM and the heads of the Steelers.
Yeah, certainly hope Smith lands somewhere on a different team. But I like this move for the Steelers because one of the big question marks last season was where in the world is Pat Freiermuth? He signed that 4-year, $48+ million extension in 2024, and he suddenly disappeared in a lot of the games last season. Now that won't really be a debate. Darnell Washington, and now you have Pat Freiermuth, and now the tight end room gets smaller. You open up some space. You get $7 million in cap saved, as you said, Big G. And now you look and see what they can do when free agency kicks off next Wednesday. So this is exciting news, I think, for the Steelers, starting to make some big decisions to really figure out what will work for the Steelers under Mike McCarthy in year 1 in Pittsburgh. All right.
And one other note is Connor Haywood. His ability to be a Swiss Army knife for them really puts a lot of pressure on any other tight end because you have a number 1 tight end, and Connor does basically everything.
Yeah.
You know, he lines fullback, he blocks, he plays special teams. So he's just that guy that you can have a lot of fun with. And I think that's what really kind of makes Jonnu Smith the odd man out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was really impressed by Connor Hayward last season. I feel like for so long, Steelers fans gave him crap for being Cam Hayward's little brother, you know, and then he kind of came into his own last season and made a big impact. So, yeah, that's a great point, Wayne. Let's take a trip down memory lane, though. Let's dive into Wayne's world. I know we did this with Cordell last week, but you've got to have some stories, off-season ready stories that you can share about your time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bring us inside the locker room in a PG fashion of some of your fondest memories in the Steel City.
And that's the hardest part, keeping it PG, trying to find out what the story was always, because in locker rooms, and you get more of the PG version now because cameras in there, so you have to sneak it in. But I'll tell you, probably my favorite part of being a Steeler was beating up on the Cleveland Browns. And I don't know if that's I could never figure out, and maybe because I missed whenever the Browns were supposed to be world beaters, but you always played them, and people would be anticipating this great rivalry, like this is going to be this game of the century, and then you get on the field and we would run for 250 yards and beat them 43-0. They invited us when they became the Browns again. I don't know why they wanted that massacre, but they invited us to their new stadium. Remember they came, I think it was around 99, maybe 2000.
Tim Couch with the quarterback, right?
Yeah, they're going to be a franchise again. And they were going to start off with us, and we ran Amos Airway, Jerome. I think we had two backs over 100 yards. Cordell didn't have to throw the ball, but maybe 12 times. You just thought it was an old 80s Oklahoma Sooner Nebraska game. We just ran over them. But I could never figure out, and even to the day when I watch and people talk about this Browns, Steelers, and I just never wanted to be open enough to ask someone like you or even other Steelers, like, when was this a rivalry? I don't know what made the Steelers and Browns a rivalry other than that they're 90 miles apart.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Again, me growing up, it was the Ravens because those were the top two teams, and that was a little bit more battled. The Browns was, well, we get to play them twice a year. And buddy on my street growing up, his name was Phil, and big Browns fan. I remember I just Tim Couch, it never panned out, and it was just an easy couple wins every season. So to your point, maybe the city of Cleveland, who I empathize with, it must be tough. I mean, obviously the Pittsburgh Pirates have really taken the city of Pittsburgh through turmoil year after year. Maybe that'll change this season. But with the Browns, you're right. I mean, they've beaten the Steelers a couple of times here over the last handful of seasons, but it's always just been, when I heard dog pound, it was like that, what the Steelers were doing to the Browns was taking them to the dog pound.
And it was just one of those each and every year, like you're saying, every once in a while they sleep up, they get a team, and they win a game against the Steelers, but it never matched up to, it was really the biggest disappointment of my 4 years there. Because it was never the hype, because when they were trying to sell me, it's going to be like Auburn, Alabama, and I'm like,
who said that? Who said that? Amos Airway?
That's how they used to know. That's how they was trying to get me when I first got there, to understand what I was walking into. There's this hatred, and you got to protect your family, and maybe not want to invite them to the game. And all of this, and then you get on the field, and it's like, when is the battle going to start? So that's the first thing when you said memory lane. I left that series not understanding the rivalry of it.
It's genuinely hilarious. That's what that is. It's just funny, and it's weird because it's just bizarre how things haven't worked out there for so many years. Even now, those teams aren't bad, but you look at the Deshaun Watson deal. What are you doing? Like, even at that time, it's like, that's the Browns being the Browns. And then they're now trying to build a new stadium, and there's arguments back and forth, and they want it to be an indoor stadium, which, by the way, Cleveland lake effect. I don't know how much fun it was actually playing in Cleveland with some of that weather. I don't know if you have any memories of some winter games in Cleveland, Wayne, but it gets cold there. I've been in Cleveland in the winter, and I can't imagine playing an entire football game in that weather.
Yeah, well, the coldest game I ever played in was in Cincinnati when they built that new stadium. It had to be about 8 below one there, but Cleveland was always they were always a cold city. But really, they were the first team. They had valet parking for the players. We didn't
the Browns.
The Browns, like when you drive up, concierge, and we didn't
Wow.
understand what the royal treatment was for. Like you're not winning, but I guess I wonder where they are on this team list of facilities and all that kind of stuff. But I do remember when you mentioned Amos Airway, Coach Cowher had always got on Amos about finishing runs at practice. And Amos was one of those guys. He came out of West Virginia. He ran a 4.3 something at that time, real muscular, great back, great instincts. But Coach Cowher would always tell him, finish the run, Amos, finish the run. So we get to Cleveland. We're on like the 10-yard line. Counter play, handed off to Amos. He breaks. I'm talking about it just opened up like a river. He breaks. He gets about 40 yards down the field. You can tell if you ever chase somebody, when the shoulders go back like that, that means that muscles have tightened up. He stumbles and falls. I mean, all he has to do is just keep running. Nobody even he falls. He's so far ahead that the defenders really are just running to say they're running. They're not trying to catch him. But he falls over his feet, stumble down at the about 8-yard line. Coach Cowher gets him over there. He has that little spit on his lip with that chink and that little that you're sitting there when he's talking and you're wondering, is it going to come off and hit me in the face? But it stayed there. I don't know how he got it to stay right there. And he goes into Amos. He doesn't play him anymore in the game. It's about 3 weeks before we see. He did him like Caleb Johnson.
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of things because he had got caught and he had been telling him all that kind of stuff. But speaking of Cleveland, that was in Cleveland in that blowout game we had against them.
What was it like playing for Bill Cowher?
I love Bill. He was a football guy, a passionate guy. He had that chip that I might not have played at the highest level, but I'm one of you guys. And he would always, take over the special teams meeting, get into it with Jim Haslett, Tim Lewis, I'm gonna take over the defense, but he never did. He just always threatened them that he's gonna take over the defense. But he was he was very inspirational. He was one of those guys who told it like it was. You go in there and you could conversate with him, very mellow. We say the word players coach. He was had a little more tyrant in him than players coach. So he was right on that border. Tony Dungy with a little tyrant in him. But I love playing for Cowher. He's one of my special coaches.
Yeah, it's interesting because growing up, you just remember all the times he was pissed off. Like for some reason, those are the images that stick in your head of Bill Cowher, for me at least, because you look at some of those images and he seemed very good at being angry or being upset. And if he wasn't, he at least put on a front that his face said he's very good at that. And now you look at him on TV and he's so calm and mellow, and it's such a different version of Bill Cowher. So it's always interesting to hear what was it like playing for Bill Cowher, because he definitely had that chip on the shoulder type energy that you're discussing there, Wayne. Wayne, thanks for sharing. Big G with some trips down memory lane. When we come back here, fourth quarter on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show on a Wednesday night, we take some more trips down memory lane. A tough loss in the football world today. Big G will discuss the impact on the other side. Stay with us. Fourth quarter here on the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. He's Wayne Big G Gandy. I'm going to abuse that nickname now, thanks to Cordell Stewart. I'm Tyler Feldman, and this is the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. So glad you're spending your Wednesday night with us. A tough day in the football world. Lou Holtz passing away, won a national championship with Notre Dame back in 1988. Wayne, what was his impact on your career, and what came to mind when you heard this news today?
Coach Holtz, and condolences to his family out there, and Coach Holtz, a giant in the game of football, especially on the collegiate level. And he was the first coach I ever met. When I saw it, he was a 17-year-old kid from Central Florida. One of the teachers at my school, she had attended Notre Dame, and she begged me to go on a recruiting trip to Notre Dame. The recruiting trips I did take were more of administrators around the school. I didn't really have an idea where I wanted to go, but the first recruiting trip I ever had was to Notre Dame.
Wow.
So I fly from Orlando to Akron, then I catch a flight over to South Bend, and I had never seen snow in my life. Remember, I'm from Central Florida, so I never had snow. I get to the airport, the doors open. South Florida kid, all I have is my high school Letterman jacket. Wind hits me, Tyler, and I was one step outside the airport, and I was sure I was not going to Notre Dame.
Yeah, you walked out, you said, hell no.
But I had seen Coach Holtz, in Florida, and football used to be more regionally shown. So you've got all the Florida State, Florida, Miami games down there. But one game you always did get was Notre Dame. So icon, and I was a little nervous. They said, Coach Holtz wants to meet you. You go up to his office. He's sitting behind his desk, and all I could see is the guy on TV running up and down the sideline. So in your mind, he's this big figure of a man. It's about the imposing man is going to step up. But he got up from the desk, and he didn't get any taller. And and I think he caught me laughing because he gets up, and he didn't get any taller. He just it was the same height as when he was sitting, and I was sitting there like, man, I'm confused, I'm Lou Holtz, and I said, Coach Holtz, I appreciate you for even finding me. That's the first thing finding me. Like, I wasn't really knowing how powerful and big Notre Dame was as a football program at that time, but he was the first iconic college football coach, or really of any kind, that I had ever met. And it was a great meeting. And by the end of the meeting, I actually wanted to go there. And Tony Rice, the quarterback, he showed me around. It was something that I had planned. I was going. Only thing I could not get over, on the way back to the airport, I looked over, and there's people ice skating on the lake. And I was like, but I always tell Jerome Bettis that, because he went to Notre Dame. Dorsey Levens, those were guys that went there. And I was like, man, I was coming, but I got sick. I said, by the time I got back to Orlando, I had caught a cold. and I just could not go back. But when I saw Coach Holtz had passed away, and I met him years later, and he remembered me. I always talked about I knew he was going to turn out. It could have been a salesman pitch, but I was up for the Outland, and he was doing some work down in Orlando at Disney World, and I just, soon as it hit me, it was just a pleasure, even though our meetings were brief, to interact with him and have. But 89 years is iconic in itself to even live that long. So, Coach Holtz, thank you for what you have provided to the football world. And whether I played for you or not, it was always a tremendous moment for me to meet you. And that was how I even got on this road to college football and then into the NFL, meeting Lou Holtz.
Wow. Yes, 89. He did pass away in Orlando, Florida. Today he was surrounded by family. So a legendary 5-decade career, again, leading Notre Dame to that national championship in 88. Do you remember any of the conversation when you stepped into his office and he didn't get any taller when he stood up? Do you remember anything that was discussed that stood out outside of the height difference between you and Lou?
Well, he was up front. He was like, you're undersized. We're deep here. We're most likely going to redshirt you. And those things were right. When I coming out of high school, I was about 250 pounds. I fashioned myself as a basketball player. So everywhere I went, they kept talking about how they was going to put weight on me, and you got great shoulders and things like that. But he was talking about family life and how, back then those coaches, the 4 visits I did have, Bobby Bowden, Pat Dye, and I went to Georgia with Ray Goff. It was his first year, but you could tell those guys were more about molding men. Sure, they wanted the 10, 12 victories, but it was all about the substance. You could really tell that was something. And they, even when I went to Auburn, that's the best part, was the part on the field took care of itself, but the coach and the way they interacted with you was always trying to inspire you to be a better man.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Lou Holtz as a TV personality more so than a football coach, and that's not meant to age you, Big G, but that's just Mark May and Lou Holtz at midnight on College Football Final, which is still today one of the last remaining, as it was, highlight shows left on television on ESPN in that fashion. It still delivers, and I think he was a big part of that for sure. So cool, Wayne, to hear you share some insight into the recruiting aspect of your career. Do you regret not going to Notre Dame? Any regret not playing for Lou Holtz?
No. I think things turn out all right.
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left here on the show tonight. I do want to turn back to the Steelers. With free agency coming up, one guy that you have talked a lot about is Kenneth Gainwell. And so let's hone in on that running back position, because he will be a free agent. What will the Steelers do with maybe that extra $7 million that they'll save from releasing Jonnu Smith? Do they fortify Kenneth Gainwell, or do they look elsewhere?
I think you have to go get Gainwell. He was a difference maker because he was, the way he can catch the ball, the impact he was making as a playmaker. He was really, when you think about it, throughout the whole season, your biggest playmaker in a lot of games. We looked for moments for DK Metcalf that never arrived. And it was always those little quick swing passes to the outside. And as a combination with Warren, they were adequate running the ball. But I think with Gainwell's ability to be able to catch the ball, move around, make plays, work out of the slot, I think there's something there that Coach McCarthy can work with. Now, how much free agency will be offering him, but he is definitely a weapon. I put it, he's kind of a hybrid, more so than just a straight running back. He's a guy that really we saw blossom, and he was making those defining plays that the Steelers sometimes were in search of. And I think that none of us expected that at the beginning of the season.
Kenneth Gainwell earned team MVP honors in his first season. And Omar Khan has said recently, quote, Kenny was great to have around, and he knows we want him back, and we've been in communication with his people. A year ago, he signed that one-year, $1.7 million deal to join the Steelers, but you'd like to think that gets bumped up a little bit, more than 1,000 yards from scrimmage, a career-high 8 touchdowns. To your point, Wayne, you got to lock him in. With all the new staff coming in, I think what you do want is some consistency at certain positions coming back next season, don't you think?
Yeah, if you can't get your hand on a big time running back, which there's not a lot out there. I know Aaron Jones was released by the Vikings, or they will release him, and he's done some big things in his career, but he is about 32 years old. I just think that someone like Kenneth Gainwell, he brings you that versatility, some things you can flex him out. He can run the screens, the quick pass game. He's just a difference maker. And I think until the Steelers can land on something, at times it looked like he was the number one receiver. And that's why you saw him win the MVP for the team. I think if you have a chance to get a guy like that that's already part of your organization back to the fold, that's what you want to do. And I know that Omar Khan mentioned trying to re-sign a lot of the guys that's already been here.
Should be interesting. Next week's show, it'll be on a Wednesday. That'll be free agency kicking off on March 11th. So hope you'll come back to join the squad for that one. But for this one, that's it. What a fun show, Wayne. A reminder, like, subscribe, and listen to the audio of tonight's show on the Locked On Steelers podcast channel, wherever and however you podcast. Big G, any final words?
Aaron Rodgers, come back quickly.
Boy, the Steelers in dire need of a franchise quarterback. You've got Big G praying that Aaron Rodgers comes back for another season at 42. But it is the best option. That's the best option in front of the Steelers right now. That'll do it, though, for this Wednesday night edition of the Locked On Steelers Squad Show. For Wayne, Big G, Gandy, I'm Tyler Feldman saying good night, and here we go. We'll see you same time next week.